So I could see the moment you said like AP US history, like I saw Ryan's like eyebrows go up here. It's like the small cult within our group. Well, so I'm delighted that folks joined us tonight. Louise is one of those people that is somebody who's, since I've been at Georgetown for 22 years, there's always those students who graduate whom like everybody at the school knows of, and we're proud of them when they're at Georgetown, and then they just go off and they do these absolutely brilliant things after graduating. So sadly enough, I've been at Georgetown for long enough to have known when Louisa was a student at Georgetown. She wasn't a science person, so I never had the opportunity to teach her. But Louisa graduated from Georgetown, if I'm right, in 2014. I believe I got this right. And is actually a small business owner. So she started her own business. She started it while she was still a student at Georgetown. But she's always had a real passion for education. And so I've gotten to know Louisa a little bit because when she was at Georgetown, she was a member of the Georgetown Scholars Program, and now she serves as a member of the board of the Georgetown Scholars Program. And that's one of the groups at Georgetown that serves to advise and mentor and form networks for our low-income first-gen students at Georgetown. And so Louisa's kind of returned to that in the role of the board member, I think has just been a fabulous contribution to our Georgetown community. And then I spent a bunch of last year getting emails from the luisasantos.com campaign as she was running to become, and then was elected to become the newest member of the Miami-Dade School Board. And if I've got this right, and I read my notes properly, it's the 4th largest public school district in the country. And so when we were thinking about who we might bring on board for Fireside Chats, I thought that Louisa has kind of traversed part of the space that we talk about here in Undermatching, both kind of personally, but I know that her passion and the platform that she ran on for the school board, because I read all of those emails, actually, Louisa, not kidding, really carefully, because I was really proud to kind of see that happening, is just passionate about this. And that's kind of her large platform and the reason that she really wanted to serve on the school board. So I thought, as we think about kind of different lenses and different ways that we think about undermatching, and we think about different ways that we can have impact within a system on it, I thought that having somebody come who is working at such a profoundly important level within such a massive public school system would be a really welcome perspective for us. So actually with that, I'm just going to be really quiet and listen up, because like the rest of you, I have imposter syndrome around this group most of the time. And so I just want to be really quiet and take notes. But Louisa, it's just such a pleasure and such an honor to have you join us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much. As you heard, I can't get away from the hilltop. Georgetown is like now a part of me. And I have so much to thank Heidi and Jerome for all they've done to get me to where I am. It really, I can't stress enough how much it means to me that people from my Hoya network show up for me and continue to do so in so many different ways through all the wild ideas I embark on, from a small business to a school board member of the 4th largest school district in the nation. And I know that that is what you all do for your students too. You are part of their network, and you are the people supporting them and showing up for them every step of the way, whether it's college application or beyond. And you are playing that role for so many students that teachers played for me, that allows me to be here today. So I'm going to share my screen because I'm sure some of you are more visual learners, and I have a few kind of visuals that can help me share a little bit of my story. Can you all see a picture of me? Yeah, okay, perfect. All right, so I'm going to spend the first few minutes running through some of what the last year of my journey has looked like, while really centering my story as I do that. And then really I want to have a conversation with you. I can dig deeper into very different parts of that story, but I want to give you an overview to get us started. And so here you can see I went from the little girl on the left with big dreams to accomplishing some of those dreams. And I have many more dreams left to accomplish, and I will work for those later. But I came to the US when I was 8 years old, and that picture on the left is me in 5th grade. And those are some of the teachers like you all who believed in me, who saw something in me that I had not yet seen in myself, and that my mom couldn't even dream in her wildest dreams was possible for me. And they gave me tools, of course, with pouring into my academic development. But they, more importantly, allowed me to dream. And that is what really has been the consistent kind of through line of my journey is my secret power is that I get to dream big. And then I believe that I can do it deep inside me. And that's the gift that educators gave me above any kind of formula they could have taught me or kind of way of thinking. And so here, let's see, I decided, I got to this country at 8. I excelled in school. Those teachers and counselors poured into me. And so much so that by senior year, I thought that I was going to start a district-wide mentoring program as a student. And that involved registering as a volunteer with the school district. And so I got the form that was needed, and I asked, the top right-hand corner said, "What's your social security number?" So I went to ask my mom very nonchalantly, "What's my social security number?" And she, in that moment, kind of paused and informed me I didn't have one. And that was how I found out that I had been an undocumented student and was an undocumented student in our schools, which, as I'm sure some of you have become familiar with, either through working with undocumented students or otherwise, that presents, especially back then more than today, but still today, presents its own set of challenges when it comes to post-graduation, college and career. And it was actually another teacher who said, my high school, although it was one of the best in the nation at the time, it's a public school, had no CAP counselor, which is our college advisor. That year, it happened to be that they were in between people and couldn't find anyone. And so my mom certainly did not know anything about college admissions here. I was teaching her what the SAT was and what FAFSA. And I just remember feeling extremely confused through all of the process. I didn't even know about Georgetown as a high school senior at one of the highest performing public schools in the nation, as a 4.0 student, as class president, as the student that you would think would be getting the information about Georgetown, right? And none of that existed for me. And then once I found out I was undocumented, I certainly felt this deep fear. I almost felt like when I called admissions offices to kind of try to understand how I could even apply when I didn't have a social security number, which was necessary on most applications, I felt this deep fear that somehow they could like report me to like authorities and that I could be deported, of all things, right? And this is what a lot of students are going through because of lack of information and lack of understanding of the options that do exist, and lack of environments that make us feel safe and welcomed, right? And so I will fast forward a bit. One of my teachers said, there's a program at our community college called the Honors College. You can go there. You will be paying out of state tuition, but they can cover the in-state portion. And that's what I did for 2 years. And there we had a one credit semester class every semester that we basically learned what I'm sure you all are working with your students on. It's just what options exist for you and what it takes to actually make those options go from dreams to reality. And over the course of those 2 years, I was able to gain the tools and knowledge and skills and frankly, exposure that I needed to understand what my options were. And then I applied to Georgetown and got in and transferred and finished there and had an incredible time, became extremely involved, and more importantly, was blessed to land in the Georgetown Scholars Program, which does meet that kind of gap of getting students through college and supporting us as first generation low-income students with all the many other things that are challenges. I was with my mentee this morning, actually, who's a GSP student currently. She was my manager at my business, and she's just finished her first in-person semester, and she came back and shared how much of a difference GSP has made. And in some ways, what you all are doing for your students is what I was able to do for her. She did 2 years at the community college, and I was able to, through those 2 years when she was my manager and going to community college, share with her my journey in detail and show her options. And she was just as capable as I was, or any student, to get to Georgetown, and she's there now. And it's like the most rewarding full circle moment for me. So I did a lot of things while I was at Georgetown. As you heard, I started a business while a student. I grew it, got investors, came back home, launched it as a full-fledged business. I was also an education minor, which meant that I, my last year in school, had a practicum. So I was an assistant fourth grade teacher for a year at a DC school. And I, for 3 years as a student, ran an after-school tutoring program, which is called DC Reads. And I went from being one tutor to a site director, where I really had the option to kind of reshape, and we grew that program to have a lot more mentorship kind of components. And then I also applied for an internship with the Undersecretary of Education while I was there, and had a front row seat to education policy at the national level, which was life-changing. And I would actually consider her, Martha Cantor, another kind of pivotal person in my life who has shown me that opportunities exist for me beyond what I have seen for myself. And that led to, there's always been an underlying kind of thread of education as I launched and grew my business. And that eventually led to joining the board of GSP, as you heard, and the board of a local non-for-profit education organization that is doing parent advocacy work. So 4 years ago, I attended a school board meeting locally as part of being on the board of this group, because we write minutes that are actually, digestible by your average parent of the meetings. And I sat there, and you want to talk about a moment that like changes your perspective. I was furious. I was frustrated. I didn't even have the words to say, like, these are the people who are representing us, and these are the conversations that we're having. It felt like everything that was being discussed had nothing to do with student achievement. It had nothing to do with teaching and learning. It felt, I felt like the lived experience of students was not captured in any way on that board. And so in that moment, I thought, the seed was planted. At that moment, I was not like, I'm running for school board, but the seed was planted that, gosh, we need to do a lot better by our students. And that evolved as I continued my involvement in education in South Florida into when the board member that represents my area said he was retiring, an opportunity, a window of opportunity that in many ways felt like I felt when he had made that announcement, if not me, who, if not now, when. And I certainly am not the profile of candidate that should be sitting in this office today, if you only look at who has been here historically, right? And so I embarked on this journey, and students are also my superpower. So I recruited a few students and said, look, I want to do this because I want to center your voice. Can we work together to make it happen? And so we came up with some maxims for our campaign. And we said, like, what's going to be what are our driving principles? And I just shared these because they kind of capture the essence of what we were going for in running against, at the end of the day, a 28-year local politician who was termed out of his county seat, who jumped over to the school board seat and had name recognition of 28 years, right? So it was really pretty much an impossible feat that we were embarking on. But we said, this is what it takes to get there. And the big ones I want to highlight are not what if, but even if. And this has been true actually when I reflect on my life. It's not what if I can't go to college because I'm undocumented. It's even if I can't go to that school, what am I going to do? It's not what if a pandemic comes and I can't knock doors because that's the way you win elections. It's even if a pandemic comes, this is how we're going to win anyway. And it has really allowed me to always stay focused on the things I control, because if I stay in the what if, I can never really actually focus on the things that I have control over. So it's even if all of that's out of my control happens, I am focused on what I and my people can do. And the extra mile is where we win. This is certainly true, being twice as good. You've heard that, the need to just do more. And that certainly had to be true for me to have a chance at winning this seat. And so there are some pictures of what it took, talking to anyone and everyone who would listen to me. Students being centered. One of my teachers from elementary school is there on the bottom left, and really thinking through how to inspire young people. I think that was key to my campaign, showing students that, hey, I'm literally you a few years ago, and we can do this. If I can get there, you can get there, and you deserve a voice there, and that's what I'm representing. And so being that vessel for showing the world that our students deserve the best, are ready for the best, and have all the potential in the world. And so I share some of these stats because it really took a Herculean effort to get here. We sent over 500,000 text messages and had, as you see, again, students at the center of everything we did, which led at the end of the day, and I'm sure this is a good reference point for you all, we got more votes than Kanye did for his national presidential campaign. You know, it worked, and it was not easy at all, but it showed people the power of centering students at the core of everything we do as a school board, and I think also proved to a lot of people in our community that centering equity as the main driver of everything that the school district does will serve our community well. And so that's how I went from advocate, you see me there on the left actually, as a college student before I was at Georgetown. That was still while I was in community college in DC fighting for the DREAM Act. And on the right, that's after my first school board meeting in December, where I passed my first piece of legislation in support of undocumented and mixed status families. And it actually relates to your work because what it is doing, it is codifying into policy annual professional development for all of our CAP counselors, our college advisors, to understand and have the information they need for all of our students that are undocumented, TPS, DACA, whose maybe parents are undocumented, but they're not. All those nuances that change all the time for our district to say, we are going to stay ahead of the game, and we are going to have all the information we need to support those students. And that's a very small piece of a much larger agenda around college access and career access too. And so I just share that because, you know, it's so interesting how in just a matter of years, you can go from fighting as an advocate, which is just as important as being in the seat that's proposing the policies that will affect so many, in this case, 350,000 students. I'm going to stop sharing so I can see more of your faces while I talk to you. And now in this seat, it's only been 4 months. I've only been in this seat 4 months. But what I know to be true is that Miami-Dade County Public Schools has come a long way, and we've got a long way to go. As I visit schools, and I have visited 50 schools since I was elected in November, I have a few more to go to get through my district. That's only my district, not our entire school system. I see a tremendous need for access to information, for students to see themselves in their teachers, in their representatives, in their principals, and to have exposure at a much earlier age. Every time I get to talk to students, I'm asking them, hey, where do you want to go to college? What do you want to do when you grow up? And so many of our students, especially in our lower income areas, like cannot name a college they would like to go to. And I take region supervisors with me on these visits because I want them to see those interactions firsthand. I don't want to just go to their office, meet in some office and tell them, you know, our kids really need to be exposed to college earlier. I want them to see and realize that some of our students, like I didn't know Georgetown was a thing as a senior, as a star student of this district. I want them to see firsthand the fact that with some more exposure and information, the opportunities are limitless for every single student in Miami-Dade County Public Schools. Of course, there's a whole nother component about how we prepare them academically, socio-emotional, et cetera. But if they don't even know where they should be dreaming of going, what they should be dreaming of achieving, then even if we give them those tools, they're going to undermatch, which is the whole challenge that you all are solving for. And so that's where I am right now. And I'm more than happy to dive deeper into any part of that. But that's a quick overview kind of my journey to this point.
Luisa, thank you for that That was I hear I've heard your story kind of on a couple of occasions, but hearing the the point where you've reached now and those pictures side by side is that was beautiful. Okay, here we go. So we've got some folks in the chat. Go for it, Rodrigo.
So I went ahead and typed it. I know it's a very broad question, but like, is there anything that you are targeting to get accomplished with your leadership for your district, for your area? And by the way, thanks for sharing your story, because this is the kind of stuff that fuels us to move forward as educators. So I want to thank you for that. I should have started off with that. But the question I have is, like, is there anything that you like specifically see, a program or a goal that you want to implement that may promote more student success or help somebody on the journey that they may follow that you've already traveled? I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, thank you for that question. The answer is yes. I launched the student fellowship as soon as I got into this position. So we have 50 students working in my office, not physically, but remotely. They're involved across the board. And with those 50 students and my team, we came together and kind of brain dumped all of the policies that we believe, not even policies, we started with what should be true. What are our pain points? What are the challenges? And what do we want to see be different as a result of our being here? So what should be different 4 years from now because we were here? And we actually came up with a list of over 50 things. And now the question for us is, how are we going to be strategic? And some of these are really new things for this board. This board for some time became kind of a rubber stamp board in many ways, because we have a very strong superintendent that has kind of led the charge. But we're kind of turning the page on now being a board that is keeping our administration accountable, because yes, we've come a long way, but we've got a long way to go and we can't get comfortable. And so the answer is, we have over 50 initiatives that we are now doing risk assessment and impact assessment. We had a facilitator come in and kind of guide us through the process of what's going to have the biggest impact, and risk-wise, what can we actually pass? But to answer your question, what will be different is we will have a more equitable school district. What does that mean? We will move significantly. I know we can't do it in 4 years, but we will move to closing the achievement gap. We have schools in my district that are considered incredibly well-performing schools. And when you look at subgroup data, there's a 60 percentage point achievement gap between our Black and white students at those high-performing schools. So who are they high-performing for? So really digging into the data by subgroup to be able to close those gaps on achievement gap. On mental health, we see our current ratio for across the district is 500 students, more or less, to one counselor. That's completely inadequate. Even our best counselors can't actually do a great job if that's their workload. And so lowering that ratio so that students can get the support they need. And then we're doing a deep dive, which is why I was sharing earlier. I'm doing a certificate at Georgetown actually on education finance, because I do believe at the end of the day, where we put our money is our value statement and it is our strategy. I don't care how many programs we have on paper. If we're not funding them, then they're not really what we're actually doing. And so I don't have the answers for you yet on what will be different when it comes to budget, but it is a huge focus of mine that we're doing a super deep dive in. And simultaneously, because we are launching on the 5-year strategic plan process for our district, our team has put together a listening campaign of over 1,000 stakeholders, which we're wrapping up at the end of April. So we are going to merge those 50 ideas we have with everything we hear from those stakeholders. And that will really, by this summer, we will have our policy roadmap of, and I'll be able to share with you, like, these are the policies we're fighting for, and this is how they will get done. And this is what will be different because of them. And if you all have ideas, please share.
Hey, Rebecca.
Hi, everyone. How are you? Thank you so much for spending your evening with us and really giving such a wonderful talk. I'm so sorry that I'm a little bit late. I would love to hear your thoughts on increasing people of color into the teaching professions. And I'd like to hear what the Miami-Dade Board is doing in terms of increasing these opportunities to, students to really recruit their own. Really have you thought about as a board how to really increase bringing back teachers to your district that were former students? Do you have like finances earmarked? Are you thinking of scholarship opportunities? And the reason why I ask this is I sit on a board for another university, and what they're trying to do is come up with a way to bring money to a program that would earmark funds for students to pursue teaching careers and then come back into high needs minority districts. So I'm curious, what y'all have been thinking about down south, and I'm picking your brain a little bit here.
Yeah, thanks for that question. It's a very important one. Actually, if I'm being completely candid, in Miami-Dade County Public Schools, I think we actually have the reverse problem. We are so focused on only hiring from our own that we actually don't even have a way of allowing amazing education leaders from other places to come in, unless, even if it's like an incredible principal at, Cristo Rey, New York, if they want to come teach here, our HR department will tell them, or they want to come be a principal here, our HR department will tell them, you have to go become a teacher and go through our process, because we only really allow people to come up from within the system. And I actually think that that is a detriment to our system, because we've become so insular that we actually miss out on a lot of learnings about the amazing things that are happening outside of our district. So I will tell you that as far as diversity in our system, we have, this district is obsessed with that. And so which is a good thing. I want us to move past diversity to the equity and inclusion and belonging piece, because we hit the numbers when it comes to a percentage of Black teachers matching percentage of students, percentage of Hispanic teachers matching percentage of students. And we know that that's actually not enough. We happen to be a majority minority district. And so it's less challenging than in other places. And yet we do still have, and I don't want to ignore your question about what are we doing? Well, we actually have plenty of grants that, because we're so large, we have really hundreds of grants going at a time. And in my last few board meetings, I've approved a handful that are for targeting our, specifically Black males, actually. Into the teaching profession, and those are still in development stages. So we won the grants, but they're not being implemented yet. We just approved them. That was 2 meetings ago. And we also have programs where we are developing our paras, our paraprofessionals, and our administrative assistants, our secretaries, et cetera, to level up into the teaching profession. And we're supporting them with, the education they need to get there.
Right. That's great, Luisa. Similar, we're doing that in Brentwood, where we have a program at our teacher center for our paraprofessionals, but we're really having a hard time with recruitment of teachers of color. And all of Long Island is. I mean, if you just Google Long Island, New York, teacher recruitment, people of color, it's all over the news right now about how we're so homogenous in terms of our school systems on Long Island, and we're really working towards really raising awareness for people to really look and say, hey, this could be a good job. And I think that starts in districts like my own in Brentwood. We're highly diverse. We're 75% Latino, and it's definitely an interesting idea that everybody is all on the same page, but it's like, how do we do it? So maybe turning to Miami is definitely an answer to this issue.
Yeah, I mean, I think we get to do it just because, one, we were under, when it came to at least our students when we were under court order until the 80s. And when that expired, we created a diversity, equity, and excellence committee for our school board, which now monitors the percentage of the different race and ethnicities of educators compared to our students. So we have a monitoring group, which does that. I don't personally think it's very effective. We just happen to hit our numbers because of traditionally who has made up our workforce. And yeah, when you have a strong cohort of Black educators are more likely to come in because they feel a sense of belonging, and they see people who look like them. So I think for us, it's a little different.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Louise, let me ask you.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, please, Kate, go for it, please.
Well, I was trying to figure out the way to word this, and I'm just gonna word it. So I've had a student who I had in 9th grade, 11th grade. I worked with her in summer programs. I can tell you all about her family and all of this information. And as she was getting done, and of course we're still virtual, as she was getting ready to do her last round of applications for her senior year, it asked me for a recommendation. I was helping her with some financial streams, and she mentioned, I can't do those. I'm undocumented. And I'm trying to figure out a way to have that conversation early in a way that is respectful and safe, because I could have helped her sooner. She's kind of backed herself into the corner, and I'm going to keep talking to her about your story is exactly what I needed to hear. You can start here, but you shouldn't be ending here, because you're way too much going for you to stay in these little colleges in Iowa. And I went to one that she's applying to, so I can say from experience. But I'm wondering, what are ways to have that conversation and identify kids that really need that help without making them feel at risk, making them feel like I am singling them out. I don't know. And so I guess kind of a personal question.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you that, like, most of us who grew up undocumented haven't even had to face that ourselves. I told you, I found out like late junior year that I was undocumented. And so I couldn't have even really articulated that to a teacher in 9th grade who may have made that open. But you certainly can obviously always share that. Anybody who shares with you this is a safe space, right? Your classroom, your office, et cetera, is a safe space. And if anyone shares that, and I think explicitly stating, if any of my students, or when any of my students have shared that they are undocumented or that their family is mixed status, that is something that I will never share with anyone, because if you explicitly say that is the thing that you can come to me with and I won't share it, then people will be like, oh, that's what she meant. Okay, she gets it. Like, I'm not gonna feel at fear of deportation. So stating it as early as possible, as publicly as possible, and saying that it's confidential if you ever find that out, I think is extremely important. And then I think it's okay to encourage students to say, hey, like, we know that in our community, we have a lot of community members that are undocumented or DACA or TPS or, mixed status. And there are specific programs that can help students in this situation. So posing it as like a positive thing from early on and saying like, people have realized that this is a barrier to college and therefore have created the dream.us at a national level. Or, as you all are probably aware, students can do the opportunity scholarship with the College Board and they can receive it as undocumented students. And so sharing the fact that there are specific programs created for them that you can share, and then sharing widely, right? I think we've run into this with the policy that I passed, and now we're in the final stages of a draft that we're going to distribute to all students, and we're sharing with CAP counselors ways to do it. And for us, it's about publishing it in the most public way possible, so no one has to self-disclose to get the information, but sharing upfront that if you want to self-disclose, this is completely safe, and we can actually give you even more personalized attention to meet your needs. Because also within that category of student, there are so many different situations. I like to think that I'm familiar with it. And every now and then I get a student who's like, so this is my case. I'm working with one right now, which I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't even know where to begin, but we're asking the right questions and working together. But yeah, I hope that's a little helpful.
Thank you very much. It is, it's one of those, we've talked about that this is kind of the feeling of the year of epic fails, because we're not with our kids. We don't have that space that they can come in and talk to us at lunch. And so often we find out after the fact. And so it just, it's your common conversation of not what if, but even if. So even if this happens again, I'm going to know. I'm going to start those conversations early. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And I'm a big fan. I've become a big fan of anonymous feedback forms for everything. So always having some sort of link that's anonymous that people can fill out a form on to say like, hey, I spoke to all of my students, and if you have any questions that maybe are more sensitive, anonymously submit it here. And then I can share out with everyone. We do that with our fellowship, and it's allowed people to ask things that I think they wouldn't otherwise ask.
I wanted to add that the Dream US is awesome. I was at our school, we're lucky enough to have had there's a program in California called CalSoap. And so it's like they hire college students to come to the high schools and help high school students with their college applications. And our CalSoap advisor was an alum a few years ago, and she helped 2 of our seniors at that time who are undocumented to get the Dream.us, and it was huge. It basically paid for all their expenses, and unfortunately, as I'm, I imagine you all may know, undocumented students sometimes have to make difficult financial choices that students with legal status don't have to make. I kind of try to start out the year with like what Luisa was saying, like, this is my, everybody here is welcome in my classroom, and regardless of what your legal status is, you are welcome here, and then sharing information with everyone so that it's not, I'm also the Gay Straight Alliance advisor at my school, and while obviously being undocumented and being LGBTQ are 2 very different things, I think the level of confidentiality that's needed is kind of similar. Yeah. So I would compare it to that. Like if a student, confides in me in either situation, it's really important to keep it confidential. And so in order to make sure that nobody feels they have to self-disclose, then you share with everybody. So my question, maybe I could connect with you later, Luisa, if that's okay. I have like I said, I'm fortunate enough to have some resources at my site, and we're able to do, my district did this kind of like, they called it renewal week. So we're on this kind of really whack quarter system in distance learning. But one thing that allowed us to do is in between quarters, we had a week with it was basically like a week of assemblies. Kids checked in and then went to all these different activities. So I was able to get, there's a group out here in LA called CHIRLA, which is the Committee for Humane Immigration Reform of Los Angeles, and one of our alums who's my age is their director for outreach. So he came and gave a really cool presentation, and then I have several students who are comfortable, several alums, I'm sorry, including one of the young ladies who got the Dream US. And another young lady who's now a community organizer in Chicago, and she's on like a local school board, so she's amazing. So they came in, they did like a student panel on being undocumented. So before the pandemic hit, those I call them kids, even though some of them are pushing 30, because I knew them when they were 14, 15. Some of the kids and I were talking about doing like a conference kind of at our school, or maybe for our district, with just having like different sessions for families and students to come and learn more about, because like you said, there's so many different situations. Like the young lady who got the Dream US, her younger brother was born here. And so I taught both of them. And the younger brother obviously doesn't have the obstacles of being undocumented, but obviously the fact that his parents and his older brother and older sister are all undocumented is a source of great stress for him. And he really struggled at the beginning of his high school career, and his family were frustrated with him because they're like, you were born here, you have these opportunities. And he was stressed because of lots of things that were going on, but their legal status played into it. So like being aware of mixed status. I have another student from the same class who I just recently found out that she doesn't have DACA, because she came here. She was explaining it to me. It had to do with when she came and how she came. And so like, there's so many different situations. So anyway, I'm sorry, I kind of feel like I'm all over the place, but I would love like maybe to talk to you about, what it would look, kind of like get your feedback if we are able to do something like this conference, and maybe invite you to speak, like, not that you have to fly out to California, but since we have, Zoom opportunities, maybe we could invite you to be, a keynote or something through Zoom or through Meet. So anyway, that's not really so much a question as like I'd like to talk to you about this more, so I don't feel like I'm like talking around, like with everybody here listening to me ramble on. I also think I might know someone If you don't know them, it's okay. But one of my former students is actually in Georgetown Scholars, Edgar Corona, and you might know him. He's a couple years ahead of you. So
okay, I don't know Edgar, unfortunately,
No, okay.
But thank you for. I mean, I can just tell by the way you're speaking about your students' stories that you obviously are so invested, and I would be more than happy to come and speak with them and
Okay.
share my story. And
Thank you.
yeah, we are figuring out how to tackle the challenge of how unique each situation is, which I think is true actually, even beyond students of undocumented or mixed status families. Every college decision is so unique. And so how do you provide that kind of highly individualized attention and support to each student? And I do believe that it takes more than a CAP counselor in a school who's your go-to college person. And I think that's probably what you all are exploring, right? Like, how do we actually empower our teachers too, without just making it another thing that we're piling on your day because you're already stretched so thin trying to do your core function of teaching, right? How do we create a system of support for students so that they can get that access to information? If any of you have answers or it's working well at your schools or districts, please share.
For me, the biggest thing that has been helpful is just like, and again, this is just sort of something I do on my own, but maintaining my network of former students. Like just the other day, one of my students self-disclosed to me, got into UCLA, but because of like the limitation, I mean, here in California, we have the DREAM Act, which gives financial aid. But as I understand it, the financial aid isn't always as generous as what's available to students with legal status. So not that community college is, I mean, I went to community college, right? Like community college is a great option. But when you're trying to decide between UCLA and community college because of financial issues, that makes me angry. It makes me angry, like, no, this kid worked so hard. He's a great kid. He should be at UCLA next year. He earned it, like, and so anyway, he reached out to me because our equivalent to the CAP counselor at your site told him that she called me the expert. I'm not the expert. I just know people who are the experts. So fortunately, I was able to connect him with 3 of those students that, you know, I mentioned. I hope they're going to be able to help, and I'm open to answering any questions he has too. It's just like they've been in that situation, so I wanted to connect him with them. So like for me, having this network where I can reach out and say like, you know, send a text message and say, hey, this student has this question, and my kids are, I'm very blessed that my alums are always willing to, you know, give back. So I would say
Absolutely.
like that's kind of how I've done it, but I don't know, you know, I don't know how feasible that is for all situations.
Yeah, but that's the point well taken. Sorry. Yeah, point well taken about how we can have our alumni. I certainly leaned on a lot of people who came before me who transferred from community college to Georgetown, some undocumented, some not, and just understanding all the unique situations.
Well, thank you. I'll reach out to you, and thanks everyone for like listening to me kind of ramble about my situation.
Luisa, I have a question for you. So something that I've been grappling a bit with in grad school, and I think it applies to you as well, is just, and something you said really kind of triggered this, is like people in grad school have all these great ideas and think that they're going to go into positions of leadership and make all this change. And then they get into positions of leadership and they do the exact same thing that everyone else has been doing before them, because the position kind of pushes them into that, or the bureaucracy and the red tape. And you said that you were at this school board meeting and you're like, what is going on here? Blah, 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 blah. Not blah, 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 but you know what I mean? And I'm just wondering how I actually wrote this question before to Jerome in this form, but now when you said it, it was like, oh, this is the perfect question, because you literally set it up like how you were going to go in and make all this change, because these were the worst conversations ever and not student-centered. And I have to be honest, I'm not that it matters what I think, but I was impressed with what you were saying about like what you've done so far. But how do you stay that way and not turn into the bureaucrat politician that you were kind of disgusted by hearing?
Gosh, that is an incredible question, because I literally talk to my team about this every single day. And we're like, how do we stay this way? So we, like the campaign, we came up with our office maxims, and those are like our guiding principles, right? I think one of the most important things for me which is what we're developing. And I was answering Rodrigo's question saying like, by this summer, we will have very clear metrics and goals, like KPIs, literally like the benchmarks of what we will get done and what will be different because of our being here. I can already tell you very candidly that I already feel some of those, like I catch myself and I'm like, no, you do not take this for an answer. You keep asking why, and you push. We don't take no for an answer for things that we know are right. And that meant just last month, I had to take something up to the state ethics commission because they weren't allowing one of my teacher appointees to serve on our citizen participation groups, right? And so not letting the system beat that drive and hunger and thirst and curiosity out of me is something that I am grappling with, even in this early stage of being 4 months in, right? Like, gosh, can you imagine 3 years in? And so staying focused on some of the maxims that are driving us, I think being incredibly self-aware of the feelings I'm having as I navigate departments and meetings and spaces, and stepping back and saying like, okay, I heard all those excuses, I get it, but still there has to be a solution. And clearly I'm not going to get it here. So I'm going to go think outside the box with some other people for a second and bring it back. A lot of what I've had to do is show, not tell, which is double as exhausting, because when I'm working with departments that are used to doing things a specific way for a long time, it's more exhausting actually to tell them my expectation than to build the bandwidth with my student fellowship to go build the thing that I want them to build and go show them at least a kind of pilot, product of what I expect from them, what is good enough for our students, what our students deserve. And then they start to catch on. They do start to catch on and say, oh, like we better do it this way next time we meet with Luisa, it wasn't like I just lectured at them. It was like, we worked together, we built something here, let's show it to you. I think the best thing that I have found even this early on is to like make sure I'm staying connected to national networks of other groups coming to things like this, or I get to be inspired by you all, and really keeping myself with an ear and eyes nationwide and with inspiring people who are thinking differently has been very important to me. And it was actually one of the must-haves in the hiring rubric I just developed for the team that I'm building. So we're in the final stages of bringing on 2 people to our team, and that relentlessness and kind of belief in what is possible and was extremely important in our hiring rubric. I don't know if that helps. And I have actually shifted my strategy, I will say, and I can see why those meetings turn the way they are. And I have decided actually that our school board meetings are the least effective way for me to make change, which has been something for me to like sit with, because I've realized actually the things I get to do outside of those meetings have the most impact. And yes, I have chosen to not introduce an item every meeting, which people are like, what is she doing? It's because I'm saving my political will for really big things. I'm not going to have you vote on declaring Earth Day, because that's not going to have an impact for anyone. But I'm going to not do those for 3 months, because then I'm bringing a clean energy commitment by 2030 with a workshop and a task force for how we're going to get there. And so really staying focused and not just kind of following how everyone navigates being on this board in the past.
Luisa, I want to follow up just briefly on Ryan's question here. So from the perspective of these great high school teachers with whom we're privileged to work, what does it look like as an impactful way for them to reach out, for example, to a school board member? Like how does a teacher kind of take this leap to say, wait, like there's this great new school board member, like, how do I grab her attention around things that she may not know, or she may not know that we know, or what does that look like to find the you in their system and make that contact?
Yeah, I'm also struggling with this, because as I skimmed the chat, it is so there's such a fear of like speaking up, and when I visit schools, principals and teachers are like, everything's perfect, everything's great, and I'm like, this kid just got kicked off of Zoom in front of my eyes. You can't tell me your Wi-Fi is working well. Like, it doesn't work. And so I have tried to lead all my conversations with getting to know people as people first. I think they're used to being treated as like robots, and what are your, are you hitting your data? And so getting to know them as people first. And I think from the educator side, like how to make that connection, I'll tell you a few teachers that have done it with me. I am very accessible. All my information's out in the world. I share it in every meeting I go to. And I have had teachers reach out to me. What I will say is more helpful, I'll give you the contrast. I've had people reach out and just say like, just kind of word vomit. And I understand that we all have to vent, and there are many things that are wrong that we are all working to fix, but that doesn't leave me in a place where I can do something about it. What helps me more is when I've had teachers reach out and say, here's the thing I'm piloting in my classroom, or here's a challenge I'm facing, and I think one of the ways to solve it is this. And then I can start to work on something. That has been the more productive approach from teachers trying to share something that's very much, on the ground level. That's been the most helpful way to do it, because I've realized, and I didn't know this coming into this role, we actually do get hundreds of emails and calls every single day. And so it is actually really hard to turn all that into action. And so I would say, like, try to overcome the fear of reaching out. You can always explicitly say, I am sharing this in confidence because there could be negative repercussions for me. And I've had teachers do that, and I've treasured that confidence with everything I have, because I don't want them to feel any repercussions. And then again, like, anonymously sending emails also starts to highlight things if you really, really have that deep, deep fear. I had a teacher write an anonymous letter after I visited her school, and she mailed it, which is so sad. And I'm fighting so hard to fix the toxic culture, but it's real. So I have to start somewhere.
Well, I don't even want to ask my question on the chat just because it's so broad, but I just want to say it's refreshing to see somebody in a leadership position that is trying to change the culture of the way education is being led by community members. Because being as experienced as I am, I don't like the word jaded, but I always try to keep myself away from that. I consider myself a high school teacher with middle school attack mode, and teach, and I don't want to lose that enthusiasm. And I can see that you have a major passion for trying to advance your students and community, and I see that as like a cultural shift. And the more people have interactions with you, I think that's going to likely lead to more success for your community and students. So I know that I started off with I've gotten something valuable from every Fireside Chat. I'm gonna tell you right now, this is pretty amazing here. So I just wanted to say thanks for being that person, and I wish there was a person like you in every one of our communities in a position like yours. But it at least gives us fuel as educators to keep moving forward.
Thank you all so much. I so appreciate that. And yeah, I'm here fighting for you all to be able to do the amazing work you're doing, for our students to continue to flourish as the people they are. And yeah, I don't have many answers yet. Actually, the more I learn, the more questions I have about how we tackle this, especially in such large districts. But my fire is not going out anytime soon, so we'll keep fighting.
Luisa, are there you mentioned staying connected and things. Are there national networks for school boards? Is there a way that you all stay connected to?
Yeah, we have a few networks, some that are statewide, some that are national, for school board members specifically, like the Florida School Board Association, and Council of Great City Schools is not just for school board, but it's for others. I know maybe some of you were in the TF8 network. Their kind of support organization, Leadership for Educational Equity, LEE, is going to be expanding to open up to more than TFA graduates. And they've been a great resource for me, a source of information and inspiration, actually, and a great network to tap into. So yes, there are some. And if you know of any, share with me, please.
I do think that's one of the issues, is that teachers often get left out of that. Like we don't have the money to travel. We don't, our admin is going to all these great conferences and getting all this great information and then coming back and saying, here's what you're going to do. And it really, the more that teachers can, if your cohorts are made up of all of those people, as opposed to just admin coming back and saying, it's a great idea. Right. I'm a theater teacher too, and I always think of, oh, my uncle has a barn, let's put on a show. And that's kind of what I feel like. They just give it to us and say, go. And they don't know our kids, and they don't know our situation, and we can make it work. We just can't make it work the way they want it to work. So
yeah. Yes, it is a huge challenge. And I'm very mindful of that, right? Like I have had to learn, even in these first few months, I am on the policy side of things. There are so many things I could just wish I could make happen administratively, programmatically, right? I wish I could go start that program and start this and that, but really my lane is policy. And the way that I was able to finally kind of come to terms with that, because there are so many other things I want to do, is there are many other people who can do programs and admin, but those people cannot do policy. So just because I can do both doesn't mean I should be there. I am uniquely able to do policy, which actually we all realize has very significant impact.
Yeah, I'm just want to be mindful of time, but Luisa, I just want to say thank you so much. And on behalf of the Pivotal Network, I think the energy that you bring to your role, the energy that you brought to this conversation is the energy that I think definitely captures the spirit of the Pivotal Network. In a lot of ways, we talk about how our pivotal educators are the rebels in their schools, and that's necessary. Disruption is necessary. We're talking about systematic issues that a system perpetuates to privilege a very select few. So yeah, you got to turn it on its head. One thing that I took away, and I've been kind of using this language a lot, there's a brilliant woman by the name of Nancy Conrad. She has the Conrad Foundation. They do a science competition, but they believe in the theory of no box thinking. And that encapsulates exactly what we're talking about here. To think outside the box is nice, but you're still thinking with the box in mind. Sometimes you got to get rid of the box. And so I appreciate you as a leader and sharing some of that no box thinking that you're approaching in Miami, and everything that we're doing here. So thank you also for sharing your contact information. That's so generous of you. And we just want to say thank you. And also, for those of you who don't know, I'm gonna just brag on her a lot. She's in the same fellowship that I was a part of in undergrad. So just not only seeing a Georgetown Hoya, but also a PHF fellow in this light really brings me a lot of joy. So I'm just personally grateful for everything you shared.
Yes, you're all amazing. And Dina, this little one is so adorable.
Cameo.
Is that Cameo?
No, the granddaughter Cameo.
should we all wave? I believe
we held her off as long as I could. I've had chicken nuggets and chocolate milk and YouTube, all the inappropriate parenting things. I've done all of them as a grandparent.
Oh my gosh, no, she can join our conversation.
Of course.
This is where future pivotal educators are made, I believe, is in conversations like this.
She becomes a school board. If she becomes a school board member, we know where it started.
Yes. Yes, there we go. Amazing. Thank you all for your time and for everything you're doing. I really appreciate you listening to my story. If I can be a resource for anything, please reach out, and yeah, just keep up the amazing work. There are so many students who are counting on you. Take care.
Thank you, Luisa. Thank you so much.
Wonderful.